Well, hello everyone. I feel like between context and this field ed class that we have been working on this ethnography project for a whole year now, and so I'm excited to share some research findings with you guys and hear from you as well. My context is Lafayette Church of Christ. I am on full-time staff as the Neighborhood Interaction Minister, and I have been working here full-time for about 18 months. Lafayette is in Baldwin, Missouri, which is a suburb of St. Louis, and we are situated in West County, St. Louis, one of the only major areas of the city that is older and wealthier and less racially diverse than the national averages. And our congregation certainly reflects those demographics. My ministry role was created to lead the local ministry component of our missions model. And so essentially, I'm here to lead Lafayette in being good neighbors in our community. And so my context is church, but my work looks more like a conglomeration of outreach, service, evangelism, social justice, community formation, you name it, but it's more outwardly focused. So this ministry has been a blessing. I've absolutely loved it and been shaped by it. But as an older, wealthier, wider commuter church, it has certainly had its challenges as well. So my motivating issue was more of a motivating pastoral principle that we have been emphasizing, and that is really the underpinning of my job here. And so the ideal at play is that as Lafayette corporately practices neighborhood interaction with the church's immediate neighbors, that the individual members of Lafayette would then practice neighborhood interaction with their neighbors where they live or work or play. And so I wanted to find a way to explore this ideal that we preach and teach and that underpins my job between gathering for corporate ministry and scattering to our individual life of ministry in our various contexts. And so hopefully by exploring this connection, we could refine the connection, we could improve on the way we communicate it. And personally, what I had at stake was that I would have a greater understanding of the way that I myself, as the minister here who leads and organizes a lot of the corporate ministry, how I fit into the bigger picture at Lafayette. And so here was the specific research question I developed. It was, in what various ways are the adults who participate in Lafayette's corporate ministries ministering in their daily life settings? And I chose a mechanical puzzle to implement this research. And this allowed me to focus on measuring how Lafayette adults are already practicing this connection between corporate ministry and individual ministry, rather than why they are or what developments had brought them to this point. And so I did make a few why inferences as I went out of pastoral necessity or curiosity, but the research was designed to measure the mechanics of how the people that are ministering in these corporate ways are also ministering in individual ways. And the research was twofold. I sent an anonymous survey that was quite extensive, that focused on the ways that our members that qualified were ministering corporately with the church in those ministries, and also then in their daily life settings, like at work, school, and their neighborhoods. And I also included a couple of more tangential questions about spiritual gifts and how they tie into this conversation, and also how our communication of this ideal, this connection, had come across previously. And finally, after the survey, I conducted 3 qualitative interviews with 3 active members of our congregation, and this allowed me to go a little bit deeper on these topics and helped to round out some of the corners of the research. All right, well, I'm excited to share a few of the surface level highlights of my survey findings, as well as some of the pastoral conclusions that I suggested. So the first measure of how people are ministering in their daily life settings was whether they could name one of their physical neighbors without going and asking them. And as the neighborhood interaction minister, I was encouraged to see that the members of my church are indeed interacting with their literal neighbors, at least, 94% of people reported that they could name one of the neighbors. And 22 of the 29 affirmative answers provided at least 4 names as examples of neighbors they could list. And so I thought that was pretty encouraging. A similar measure, but one where the numbers dropped, was whether they could name a local employee. 59% of people answered affirmatively, which wasn't horrible, but um, I think this is a easy but still meaningful way to minister out in our daily context, to be paying attention to the people we encounter on a consistent basis at coffee shops or grocery stores or restaurants. And so I came up with a few plans to more explicitly challenge our members on this front. To speed things up, 56% said they had prayed for a spiritual relationship with a coworker or a neighbor or somebody like that. 67% said that they had invited a non-Christian to eat with them in the last 18 months, and 62% said that they had been invited to eat with a non-Christian. Similar question in nature, but the numbers dropped again. 35% of people reported that they had invited someone of a different race or ethnicity to eat with them in the last 18 months. And then that number dropped even more to 18% had been invited to eat with someone of a different race or ethnicity. And so I actually suggested in my paper a couple of pastoral conclusions on these questions involving race. Given the demographics of our church and our area and some of the racial history that is always unavoidable when you are dealing with a city like St. Louis. And so we had so many different measurements of the way people were participating. And besides the numbers involved, people gave me stories and names and details and examples of how they were doing these things, or the specifics of it. And so I do have these quantitative numbers to deal with, but there was a lot more qualitative stuff as well, even in the surveys and obviously in the interviews. And so all in all, parsing through all this, drawing conclusions, making applications, I was very encouraged. I was pleasantly surprised. I wrote more than a dozen concrete applications that I think are realistic to implement. These range from preaching on a certain aspect of this study to following up with a single member who I think could benefit from something we gleaned from this. And so I was very encouraged, and I really view the two parts of this, the corporate ministry and the individual ministry in the life of the individuals, as crucial elements of the life of a disciple of Jesus, someone who's trying to look more like Jesus. And so I think this study is going to help me, and it's going to help me help others as they figure out what it means to be a disciple, what it means to minister corporately and individually. And so thank you for listening to this sincerely, and I look forward to hearing your results as well.